How do you love someone the world says you can't? I'm not talking about a fleeting crush or a summer fling that fades with the season. I mean the kind of love that burns through you, that twists your stomach and makes your heart pound so loud you're sure everyone can hear it. The kind of love that feels so right in the moment, but so wrong when you step back and look at it. My name's Ellie, and this is the story of how I fell for the one person I was never supposed to want, my stepbrother, Caleb. It started with stolen glances across a crowded dinner table, late-night whispers when the house was asleep, and a secret that grew too heavy to carry. When our family found out, everything we'd built shattered, and I'm still sifting through the wreckage, trying to make sense of it all. I was 19 when it began, living in a house that felt like a stage where I didn't know my lines. My mom had remarried, and Caleb came with the deal, 21, quiet, with eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. At first, I couldn't stand him. He was too serious, too closed off, like he was guarding some deep, dark truth. But one night, everything changed. The house was dark, the air thick with summer heat, the kind that clings to your skin and makes you restless. I saw him, and something sparked, a pull, a danger I couldn't name. I should have walked away. I should have known better. But I didn't. And neither did he. What would you do if you felt something so strong it scared you to your core? Would you fight it, or would you let it drag you under? For me, it was like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one step could ruin everything. I took that step. And even now, I don't know if I regret it. Stick with me, because this isn't just a story about love, it's about guilt, secrets, and the moment everything falls apart. You won't believe how it ends. Let me take you back to the beginning, so you can understand how I got here. My mom married Caleb's dad, Richard, when I was 17, and our lives were thrown together like pieces from different puzzles that didn't quite fit. They were head over heels, Mom and Richard, always holding hands, giggling at inside jokes, their happiness almost too bright to look at. Meanwhile, I was the awkward teenager, still raw from my dad walking out years earlier, trying to find my place in a new house in suburban Ohio. The house was big, all polished wood and high ceilings, but it felt small, like the walls were always watching, waiting for someone to slip up. Richard tried hard to be a dad, always asking about my day with this eager, hopeful smile, but it never landed right. And Caleb? He was just there. This quiet, brooding figure who seemed to exist on the edges of every room. He was 21, home from college for the summer, and he carried this intensity that made my skin prickle. He wasn't like the guys at school, all loud bravado and cheap cologne. Caleb was different. His silence felt heavy, like he was always thinking something he'd never say out loud. I'd catch him in the living room, curled up with some dogged paperback, his dark hair falling into his eyes, and I'd pretend I wasn't watching. But I was. I noticed the way his jaw clenched when Mom and Richard bickered, the way his fingers tapped a nervous rhythm against his knee when he thought no one was looking. I noticed everything. At first, we barely spoke. I'd toss out sarcastic comments, trying to get a reaction, but he'd just give me this half-smile, like he knew something I didn't, and go back to his book. It drove me crazy, that quiet confidence, like he was above it all. Our parents were gone a lot, date nights, work trips, leaving us alone in that big, echoey house. Those first few months, we were like strangers sharing a space, orbiting each other without colliding. But then came that night in July, the air sticky and oppressive, the kind of heat that makes you feel like you're drowning in your own skin. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with nothing and everything, so I wandered downstairs for a glass of water. Caleb was there, sitting at the kitchen counter, a glass of whiskey in front of him, untouched, like he was staring it down instead of drinking it. His eyes flicked up when I walked in, and for a second, I thought he'd ignore me like always. "You okay?" I asked, expecting him to brush me off. But he didn't. He looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time, and said, "You ever feel like you're pretending to be someone you're not?" His voice was low, raw, like he'd been holding those words in for years. I froze, my breath catching, because it was the most real thing anyone had said to me in forever. I sat down across from him, the counter between us feeling like a lifeline and a barrier all at once. We started talking, not about anything big, just music we liked, movies we'd seen, the kind of small talk you used to fill a silence. But it wasn't small. It felt like the first real conversation I'd had since moving into that house. It felt safe, like I could finally breathe. That night stretched into more nights. We'd stay up late, long after the house went quiet, sitting in the dark, whispering like we were afraid the walls would hear us. I told him things I'd never told anyone, how my dad left when I was 10, how I still checked my phone for messages that never came, how I felt like I was always performing for Mom and Richard, trying to be the perfect daughter. He listened, really listened, his eyes soft but intense, like he was memorizing every word. He told me about his mom, who died when he was 12, how he'd watched her fade away in a hospital bed, how he felt like he had to be perfect for his dad to make up for it. We were two broken pieces, jagged and sharp, but somehow fitting together in a way that didn't make sense. I started to feel it then, this warmth in my chest when he laughed, this flutter when his hand brushed mine as we passed a bowl of popcorn or reached for the same light switch. I told myself it was nothing, just a stupid crush, just the loneliness of a new house and a new life. But deep down, I knew it was more. I knew it was dangerous. It was a Thursday in August when we crossed the line, the moment everything changed and there was no going back. We were in the basement, sprawled on the old couch, watching some cheesy horror movie with terrible special effects that made us laugh more than scream. Caleb was sitting close, closer than he needed to be, his knee brushing mine, the air between us charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I don't know who moved first, maybe me, maybe him, but suddenly his hand was on mine, warm and steady, and I didn't pull away. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. He looked at me, his eyes searching, questioning, like he was asking permission and begging for forgiveness all at once. "Ellie," he whispered, my name soft and heavy, like a secret he'd been carrying too long. And then he kissed me. It wasn't like the movies, all smooth and choreographed. It was messy, desperate, like we were both drowning and this was the only way to breathe. My hands found his face, his hair, pulling him closer, and for a moment, nothing else existed. No family, no rules, no consequences. Just us. But even as I melted into him, I felt it, the guilt, sharp and cold, slicing through the warmth. I knew it was wrong. God, I knew it. But it felt like the truest thing I'd ever done. We pulled back, breathless, and he looked at me, his eyes wide with something like fear. "We can't do this," he said, but his hands were still on me, his thumb brushing my wrist, and I could see the war inside him, wanting me, hating himself for it. I felt it too, the pull and the push, the need and the shame. I didn't want to stop. Neither did he. For weeks, we lived in this secret world, a fragile bubble we built out of stolen moments. Kisses in the garage when Mom and Richard were out, late-night texts when the house was asleep, moments where we'd pretend to be just siblings if anyone was watching. But we weren't. We were something else, something forbidden, something that felt like a rebellion every time we touched. I'd lie awake at night, replaying his voice, the way he'd say my name, the way his hands felt against my skin. Every whisper was a risk, every glance a dare. But the guilt was always there, lurking like a shadow, whispering that we were playing with fire. What were we doing? What would happen if someone found out? I tried to push it down, to focus on the way he made me feel, alive, seen, wanted, but it was always there, gnawing at me. Caleb felt it too. I could see it in the way his smile faltered sometimes, the way he'd pull back after a kiss, like he was trying to talk himself out of it. But we couldn't stop. It was like we were addicted, chasing the high of each other despite the cost. The first crack came in September, when Caleb went back to college and I started my freshman year at a local community college. The distance made everything harder. We'd text constantly, careful to delete every message, but it wasn't enough. I missed him, not just his touch, but his presence, the way he made me feel like I wasn't alone in the world. I'd sit in class, staring at my notes, but all I could think about was him, his laugh, his smell, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. One weekend, he came home, and we couldn't help ourselves. We snuck out to the park near our house, a reckless move, but I didn't care. We sat under a tree, hidden by the dark, the air cool against our skin. He took my hand, his fingers trembling, and said, "Ellie, I'm falling for you." Not a crush, not a fling, real, messy, terrifying love. My throat tightened, and I said it back, the words feeling like a vow, like we were sealing our fate. We kissed under that tree, the world fading away, and for a moment, I believed we could make it work. That we could keep this secret forever. But secrets don't stay buried. Mom started noticing things. How I'd smile at my phone, how I'd get quiet when Caleb's name came up in conversation. She'd ask questions, casual at first, then sharper, her eyes narrowing like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You two are getting along better," she'd say, her voice tight, and I'd laugh it off, my stomach twisting into knots. Caleb and I got careless, too caught up in each other to see the warning signs. One night we were in his room, whispering, laughing, our hands tangled together, when Richard knocked. We jumped apart, my heart in my throat, but I saw the suspicion in his eyes, the way they lingered on us. He didn't say anything, but I knew he felt it, something was off. The tension grew thicker, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Caleb and I started fighting, not because we wanted to, but because the pressure was suffocating. He'd say we needed to stop, that we were going to ruin everything, his voice breaking with frustration. I'd beg him to stay, tears burning my eyes, terrified of losing the only person who made me feel whole. Every time we tried to pull back, we'd end up closer, like magnets drawn together no matter how hard we fought it. But the world was closing in. Friends started asking why I was so distracted, why I'd zone out in the middle of conversations. My grades slipped, my focus shattered. I was living for those stolen moments with Caleb, and everything else was falling apart. Then came the night that broke us. It was November, cold and gray, the kind of night that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. Mom and Richard were supposed to be at a dinner party, so Caleb and I were in the living room, tangled in each other on the couch, our whispers drowned out by the TV. I was lost in him, in the way his hands felt, the way his breath caught when I kissed his neck. We didn't hear the front door open. We didn't hear the footsteps. But then there was Mom, standing in the doorway, her face pale as death, Richard behind her, his eyes dark with rage. They'd come home early. "What the hell is this?" Mom screamed, her voice shattering the air. I froze, my heart stopping, Caleb's hands falling away from me. I'll never forget the look in her eyes, disgust, betrayal, like I'd ripped her world apart. Caleb tried to speak, to explain, but his voice broke, the words crumbling before they could form. Richard didn't say a word, just stared at us, his hands clenched into fists, his silence louder than any scream. I wanted to disappear, to rewind time, to take it all back, but it was too late. The secret was out, and it was tearing us apart. The fallout was worse than anything I could have imagined. Mom didn't speak to me for days, her silence heavier than any punishment. She'd just look at me, her eyes full of questions she didn't want answers to, her hands trembling as she poured her coffee. Richard was worse, he'd slam doors, leave the house for hours, like he couldn't bear to be in the same space as us. Caleb and I were forbidden from being alone together, the rule unspoken but ironclad. No more late-night talks, no more stolen kisses, no more moments where we could pretend the world didn't exist. The house felt like a prison, every creak of the floorboards a reminder of what we'd done. I was the criminal, the one who'd broken the family, and the guilt was suffocating. But the worst part? I still loved him. Even with the shame, the way Mom's voice cracked when she finally confronted me. "How could you do this to us, Ellie?" I couldn't stop feeling it. Caleb was my safe place, my anchor, the one person who saw me for who I was. But now he was slipping away, and every glance we shared across the dinner table was like a knife in my chest. He looked exhausted, haunted, like he was carrying the weight of our secret alone. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him we'd find a way, but the walls between us were too high. Mom sent me to therapy, convinced it would fix me, like I was some broken machine that just needed a tune-up. The therapist was kind, with soft eyes and a soothing voice, but she didn't understand. She'd talk about boundaries, family dynamics, healthy relationships, but how do you explain a love that feels like it's carved into your bones? I'd sit there, nodding, pretending to listen, while my mind wandered back to Caleb, his laugh, the way his fingers traced patterns on my skin, the way he'd whisper my name like it was a prayer. I didn't want to be fixed. I just wanted him. I'd leave those sessions feeling emptier than when I went in, my heart heavy with everything I couldn't say. Caleb was struggling too. I could see it in the way his texts got shorter, the way his voice sounded strained when we managed a stolen call. One night, he broke our no-contact rule, texting me from his dorm in the middle of the night. "I can't do this without you," he wrote, and I cried reading it, because I felt the same. We started sneaking calls, late at night when the house was quiet, our voices low and urgent. We'd talk about running away, starting over somewhere no one knew us, where we could be together without judgment. It was a fantasy, a desperate dream we clung to, but it kept us going. We were so careful, or so we thought. Then came the second blow, the one that broke what was left of us. Richard found Caleb's phone, left carelessly on the kitchen counter during a weekend visit. He saw our messages, not the explicit ones, we'd been too smart for that, but enough to confirm what he'd suspected. The late-night texts, the cryptic, "I miss you," the way we talk about someday. He called a family meeting, the kind where everyone sits in silence, the air thick with dread. Mom sat across from me, her face pale, her hands twisted together in her lap. Richard stood, his voice cold as ice. "This ends now," he said, looking at Caleb like he was a stranger, not his son. "You're moving out. I've set up an apartment near your campus. You don't come back here." Mom didn't argue, didn't even look up, just sat there with tears streaming down her face, clutching my hand like I was her lifeline and her burden all at once. I wanted to scream, to beg, to tell them it wasn't just some fling, that it was real, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of their anger. Caleb didn't fight back either. He just nodded, his eyes hollow, and I knew he was breaking inside. Caleb left the next day. I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. I watched from my bedroom window as he packed his car, his movements slow, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying the world. He didn't look up at the house, didn't look for me, and I wondered if he blamed me, if he hated me for what we'd done. I wanted to run to him, to scream that I didn't care what anyone thought, that I'd follow him anywhere, but I was frozen, my feet rooted to the floor. That night, I cried until my chest ached, the kind of sobs that leave you empty, like you've poured out everything you are. I kept replaying it all in my head, the first kiss, the stolen nights, the way he'd hold me like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. What if we'd been more careful? What if we'd never started? The questions looped endlessly, but there were no answers, just this hollow ache where he used to be. Months passed, and the house settled into an uneasy quiet, like the calm after a storm that's left everything in ruins. Mom and Richard tried to act normal, making small talk over dinner, but it was forced, like they were playing parts in a play no one believed in. I threw myself into school, trying to bury the pain, but Caleb was everywhere, in the songs we'd listened to, the coffee shop we'd sneak to, the way the air felt heavy when it rained. I checked my phone, hoping for a text, a sign, anything, but there was nothing. He was gone, and I was alone with my guilt, my memories, my love that had nowhere to go. I started avoiding mirrors, because I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me, hollow-eyed, lost, carrying a secret that felt like a brand on my skin. I'd lie awake at night, wondering where he was, what he was doing, if he thought of me as much as I thought of him. The silence was deafening, and I hated myself for it, for loving him, for ruining everything, for not being strong enough to let go. Then, one day, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in Caleb's familiar handwriting, slanted and sharp, like he'd written it in a hurry. My hand shook as I opened it, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. The letter was short, just a single page, but every word felt like a knife. He wrote about his new life, how he was trying to move on, how he'd found a small apartment and a new routine. But every sentence was laced with longing, with the weight of what we'd lost. "I don't regret you," he wrote, and those words broke me all over again. "I regret how it ended." He said he was transferring to a college out of state, starting fresh, leaving everything behind. He didn't ask me to follow, didn't ask me to write back, but the question hung there, unspoken, like a ghost between the lines. I read it over and over, clutching the paper so tight it crumpled, my tears smudging the ink. Should I write back? Should I let him go? I didn't know. I carried the letter with me for days, hidden in my pocket, a secret I couldn't share. I'd take it out when I was alone, tracing his words, trying to find the courage to decide. But every time I thought about writing back, I'd see Mom's face, the way she looked at me like I'd betrayed her, the way Richard's anger had torn our family apart. I loved Caleb, but I couldn't keep breaking everyone around me. In the end, I didn't write back. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but I couldn't. Every time I picked up a pen, I saw Mom's tears, Richard's clenched fists, the way our house had become a battlefield because of us. I loved him, but the cost was too high, the damage too deep. So I let him go, or at least I tried. I burned the letter one night, standing in the backyard, watching the flames eat away at his words, hoping it would burn away the ache in my chest. But it didn't. Some loves don't leave you, they just settle into your bones, quiet but heavy, like a scar you learn to live with. I told myself it was for the best, that we were better off apart, but every night, I'd dream of him, his voice, his touch, the way he made me feel like I was enough. I'd wake up with his name on my lips, my heart racing, and the guilt would flood back, as fresh as the day it all fell apart. A year later, I heard through a mutual friend that Caleb was engaged. Engaged. The word hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of me. I pictured him with someone else, smiling, happy, building a life I'd never be part of, and it hurt in a way I can't describe. It wasn't just jealousy, it was grief, like I'd lost him all over again. But there was something else in the rumor, something that made my heart twist. His fiancée didn't know about me. No one did. Our secret was still ours, locked away in a past we couldn't touch, a love no one else would ever understand. And maybe that's the worst part, knowing we shared something so real, so consuming, but it's gone, buried under the weight of what we did. I'm 22 now, and I'm still trying to figure out what love means when it's forbidden, when it comes with a price this high. Was it real, or was it just the thrill of breaking the rules? I don't have answers, and maybe I never will. But I know one thing, I'll never forget him. Not the way he looked at me, like I was the only thing that mattered. Not the way he made me feel alive, even when it hurt. Not the way we burned so bright, only to crash and break. What would you do if love broke all the rules? Would you fight for it, no matter the cost, or would you let it go, knowing it might haunt you forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. If this story hit you hard, hit that like button and share it with someone who gets it. Maybe you've got a secret like mine, a love you've had to hide, a choice you're still carrying. Tell me below, because I'm listening, and I know what it's like to carry something no one else can understand.